And so I think one sort of, you had mentioned that you found the 1%, the kind of the banking elite, these kind of people actually pitiable. And I found it really interesting that you said that because, you were saying how that was, that's because they're on this side of like increased isolation. It's the same people that are saying, oh, we need to take care of our own, or the people that are saying, oh, I'm going to live in a gated community, or I'm going to live in Bel Air, I'm going to live in, X and Y location, and I'm going to isolate myself from this rich discourse that's happening elsewhere. And of course, like that, I mean, okay, so you can do that, and that can last for a while, but it's really important to kind of realize that, like, innovation always comes from the peripheries and the boundaries, the liminal spaces. That's just where it comes from, and it comes there because things collide, and they don't collide if you keep them antiseptic and safe. And for me, the most interesting property of the internet, or one of them, I mean, in any given regard, let's say music, is how it allows for these kind of these collisions and these combinations to take place. And that's fundamentally about the idea, as my friend Johannes Bhakti says, knowledge evolves through iteration. That's how it happens.
Yeah.
You iterate, knowledge evolves.
And
right?
if I can interject here a little bit,
Yeah.
knowledge increases through iteration. This is absolutely true. If you look at the history of scientific advances, it's not these lone geniuses who just come up with ideas like Minerva springing from Jupiter's brain. It's very much part of there's phenomena that happen. There's a reason that Newton and Leibniz came up with calculus at like the exact same time. It's just because the cultural conditions were ripe for it.
Right, and Darwin and his home slice, and it's like, oh, there's this like strata of like Tycho Brahe and all these guys who were like doing stuff before him. It's like
so when you
so
when you recognize that these innovations come from environmental conditions almost exclusively, this is very guns, germs, and steel as I see it, where the environment, like the cultural environment specifically, is really what enables these advances to come. Then the idea of merit really kind of falls by the wayside, and I can't hammer against this idea of merit enough. I think it's kind of the reigning justification for all manner of just unspeakable evil. I mean, we have the capability to provide healthcare for everybody in this country many times over, really, and we don't. And why not? Because, well, they didn't earn it. That's kind of the thing we get. Well, the rich should keep their money. It's their money. They came up with this great idea, or they like did this fantastic thing, and it's theirs. And what? They couldn't have done anything without these underlying social conditions, which everybody helped create. And I think if there's anything that the Occupy Wall Street movement can say to really just kind of shake the rich by their lapels and say, no, we need to stop the direction we're going in. I think it's going to be something very like that.
Something like the idea of merit in a certain way, with enough interconnectedness is sort of flawed. Like, yes, there is individual creativity. Some people are more or less interesting nodes or collators or collectors of information, curators, and so on.
But a node is defined by what it connects to also, and that's what I think people are really missing. But I'm interjecting. Go on.
No. So that's interesting. So so this idea of merit. I mean, and this is a strong idea. This is a strong American myth. The idea and myth in just a neutral sense. The idea of merit, and it's just sort of like a question of scale. Is it like the individual person that does the stuff, or is it like the broader society? I mean, like, and you can. This is not a new idea. Even this dissolution of the concept of merit. I mean, War and Peace. A third of the book is like essentially a destruction of the concept of the great man, the great men of history theory, which is like the same thing. It's like, well, in the World War. Which of course some people analogize to business. It's people like Napoleon. They're great because of like historical accident and all these kind of like properties of the network and environment in which they're in. In the same way that now, like it's absurd just to like like how, for example, Jared Diamond's research makes, any remaining, vestigial hint of like justification for racism, which, would be silly anyway, even more patently absurd. Because it's like, oh yeah, well, it's like actually if you just look at like the geographic and structural considerations of these places, like there's like very like logical, reasons why, Europe developed cargo and, and Tuvalu didn't in the same amount of time, and what that means. And so it's like just stupid to be racist. And yeah, and it's also sort of like this idea of merit. Also, yeah, maybe it is oftentimes a tool of the elite. I mean, I think that's obviously true, for example, in the Republican Party, because what do you have in the Republican Party? It's this bizarre two-headed hydra of the extremely wealthy and, and the people who are extremely religiously conservative and are, generally sort of like Caucasian American poor.
Yeah, and their religion has very little.
And how is that? How is that? Like, what's the thing that makes that group of people that would appear to have, in fact, in Marxian terms, like completely antithetical interests? What allows them to form a political party besides, the winner-take-all political system, which creates this weird bifurcated system that's bullshit anyway? Is the fact that they're both promulgating this myth of merit, maybe. Yeah. This idea of like, well, it's mine and I earned it. Like, and the businessman owns that, and he owns, like everything. And then these people that like have nothing, but worked in the manufacturing service for this guy, are saying, well, yeah, exactly. I believe in that idea of merit, and like, by gum, I don't have health care, but if I just worked harder and then I could do it.
Yeah.
And of course, like, but there's always been. I mean, so this is like this really deep-seated question in America. It's like this is one of our most strongly held political myths, but it's like
it's a religious myth too. Like, it's important to keep that in mind.
What's that?
It's a religious myth as well. American Christianity definitely subscribes to this idea of merit. It's completely extra biblical, of course, but
as are most things in Christianity.
Yeah, but
as is in fact the practice of Christianity, I would say. But.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I would be careful not to not denigrate religion too much, and I would really warn the Occupy Wall Street protesters against that, because there is a lot of you can make the case for Occupy Wall Street using nothing but biblical quotes, I think, and that really should be done. Christianity.
This meme that's been going around of like the original Occupy Wall Street protester, and it's like Jesus in the temple, like something telling off the bankers and all this stuff.
Yeah.
This is a powerful, iconic image that speaks to the Tea Party people, for example.
Yeah, and why not avail that? Why shouldn't we avail ourselves of that language of communication? Because I think not only is it useful, but I think it's actually true. It's what Christianity is. It's what people on some level really are drawn to drawn to the religion for that reason, and it's just a massive mine to be tapped, a mine of ideas, a mine of ways of communicating that is it's really been neglected. It's only the people who are creating the false consciousnesses, the Fox Newses, who are doing that. But I think there's a lot of value in it.
Well, and that may be true. I mean, certainly one can argue in a purely like tactical sense that the rhetoric. I mean, like, why not avail yourselves of all possible sources that have regard in society, and that's certainly one. And I think probably, I think actually what you're saying is probably tactically sound, because who are the people that most definitively or originally were the Occupy Wall Street movement? Well, they're like educated young people, and a lot of them aren't particularly religious, and so. But that's of course another divide between classes, and another divide that maybe you're saying we could bridge, and that's interesting. Yeah, but so.